And Police Chief Steele is here. Hello, I'm Sally.
You can choose not to be visible.
Megan,
Yes,
since you're recording it, can you send me a recording?
no problem.
Thank you.
Or a link to it.
Yeah, or link.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll put it on our YouTube channel and I'll send you the link so you can grab it straight from there.
Excellent. Thank you.
Can I grab your email address? And we can do this later too. I don't know if you want to share it right now.
It's just ardith@comcast.net.
Oh, that's nice and simple.
Mm-hmm.
Or artistgram@gmail.com works too.
Okay, I got it. A couple more coming in.
These guys are
So Jeremiah's there. Okay.
Ryan Chimay.
Jeremiah Baldwin is our land use officer.
That's right.
It's like we have people coming and going.
Got Counselor Morrison coming on.
Valerie's here. She counts. Okay, so we are already at more people than our last meeting. So I'm looking at 20 CIO members, which is more than we had last time. So this is really good. And I'm sure there's going to be more.
I changed our name.
I hope there's going to be more. It's 7:01 though.
You do it by going up here and saying rename.
Everybody's bigger.
So Megan, do you recommend that we all mute so that the background noise doesn't make pictures?
That typically helps, particularly if people have got stuff happening in the background. Sometimes the audio can get a little funky.
Yeah, let's do that.
It's up to you.
And Sally, I've got ability to mute people too, if they're have difficulty doing it on their end.
Okay. And am I monitoring the chat room or are you?
I can do that.
I'm not figuring it out.
What aren't you figuring out? Mute?
Looks like she got it.
Yeah, I think she got it. Well, this group is fairly stable now. So do we want to go ahead and get going? Okay. Well, this is the first ever Tualatin CIO Zoom annual meeting. So I want to welcome you all. I am Sally Olson. I'm the president of the Martinazzi Woods CIO, and I'm assuming that most of you are either presenters tonight or CIO members or both. So welcome and thank you for taking the time to come to the meeting tonight. I'm going to run through our agenda really quickly, just so you know what's coming up. So I have just a couple of minutes to say hello. And then Police Chief Bill Steele is going to be talking for 10 minutes. He had a couple of questions that our board sent to him, and then he will be available. You can unmute yourself and ask a question if you have a question that Chief Steele hasn't answered. Next up is Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue. The Public Affairs Officer is Stefan Myers. He has 10 minutes for TVFYNR. After that is the Assistant Community Development Director, Steve Koper, who will be talking about the Basalt Creek development. He has 5 minutes. After him is Valerie Pratt, who is she lives in our CIO and she's also one of our city council persons. And I thought I saw Paul Morrison on here too. We'll have a city council update from Valerie and then Paul, if you want to add anything to that. Barbara Bracken from Community Emergency Response Team, the CERT team, is going to be talking about Tualatin Neighborhood Ready and talking about the need for hosts, cluster hosts, to host Zoom meetings on preparedness. After that, we're going to have CIO elections. We have 2 positions that are they are currently filled, but they are up for election now. That's our vice president and our treasurer. If time allows, I'm going to talk briefly about the CIO grant process, and then other business in closing, and we will wrap it up. And we intend to wrap up within an hour. So I think that just looking at the list of people who are here, all of you are familiar with what a CIO is. Community involvement organization. It is a part of the city, and our purpose is to build up neighborhoods and community. And we do that through several ways. The purpose of this meeting tonight is to get input from some of our city leaders, to make them available to you for questions, and just to see other faces, get to know some of your neighbors. So if everybody would mute now, I am going to introduce Chief Bill Steele, and he is going to be telling us about what's going on with the police department in Tualatin.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time. Again, my name is Bill Steele. I'm your chief of police. I've been the chief here in town for about 4.5 years now. You know, as all of you have experienced, just like we have, 2020 has been a very interesting year for the police department. I've been a police officer for about 25 years, and I can guarantee you we've never faced a pandemic, civil unrest, wildfires, none of that, especially not all at the same time. So there's been a lot going on in our community, that's for sure. There were a few questions that were submitted in advance, and I want to make sure I touch on those before we go any further. The first question had to do with how we are being supported within the police department, and I got to say thank you very much. We are very fortunate to have community support here in Tualatin that is unmatched to anybody around us. So we're very thankful for that. I'm very proud of our staff and how we interact with our community on a daily basis. We're doing our best out there to make sure that this is a safe environment for everyone. I know we're not perfect, but we learn from our mistakes, and we're constantly trying to get better in regards to the service that we provide. So thank you again for the service, the support that we have. The second question had to do with protests and demonstrations in the city. That again is something that we've never faced in Tualatin. But after the murder of George Floyd, it became very clear that there was a lot of concern about what police were doing in our local community, and how that reflected in comparison to what was being seen nationally. Thankfully, we don't have some of the issues that were other parts of the country were dealing with, some of the concerns about their local police departments. Again, I'm very proud of the police department that we have. I believe we're pretty top notch in a lot of ways. And a lot of the concerns that people began to express were issues that we've been dealing with and making sure that weren't something that occurred in Tualatin. And we've been, working in a manner for years to make sure we were out there meeting best practices when it comes to law enforcement and policing in communities, and making sure that we have that good communication with our community on an ongoing basis. So the demonstration, the first one I'll mention, we had one, it was right after the murder of George Floyd. It occurred at the Lake of the Commons, very well attended, at about 1,000 people. We took a stance pretty early on in that event that we wanted to be proactive. We reached out immediately to the organizer of the event to see what we could do to make sure that it came across as a safe event where people had the opportunity to express their concerns, have their voices heard, but do it in a safe manner for everybody involved. So we had a presence out there. We were making sure that, there was no damage being done in our community, that it was, going as smoothly as possible. We wanted to make sure if they did decide to go on a march, that we could get people safely through the community and, and have as less of an impact on traffic as possible. And at the end of the day, I think we did a pretty good job with that. It turned out to be a positive event for everybody that was involved. And again, I'm happy with the way our officers responded and handled that situation. So that was the big event that we had. We have not had any significant demonstrations since then. There were a couple smaller ones shortly thereafter that, but didn't raise to the level of attendance that that first one drew. So if we are to face that again in the future, we're going to have that same approach. We're going to do what we can to work with the organizers of the event, make sure it's done in a safe manner as much as we can. So that was kind of the demonstrations that we faced. Wow, it's been 5 months now. 2020 has been quite a long year, so that was a long time ago. I had a couple questions about gang activity. We're very fortunate that we don't really have significant gang activity in Tualatin. In my previous life and experience as a police officer, I actually for a few years supervised what was then the county interagency gang enforcement team. So I've got a little bit of background in gang enforcement, and we'll see a little bit of graffiti every now and then pop up in our community, but we really try to get on that pretty quickly to kind of squash any of that presence that gangs might be able to try to make a footprint in our community. So again, gang activity around Tualatin is really pretty minimal. And it's something we're always on the watch for to make sure that they don't get that established footprint in our community. So that's really not much of an issue around here. And the last question I got in advance had to do with homelessness and kind of an update about that. And man, there's never a good time to be finding yourself in a situation where you're dealing with homelessness, but much less in a pandemic like we're in the middle of. So our officers do what we can to make sure we're getting people the resources that are available in our community for working through homelessness issues. We're going into a time of the year where it's going to be even more of a challenge. We'll typically have cold weather shelters that start to open up. Those are going to look a little bit different this year because of the pandemic. There are some countywide resources that have been stood up. They might not be local here in our area, but an example would be Washington County basically rented out a hotel near the Washington County Fairgrounds in Hillsborough to provide some safe shelter for people that not only are facing homeless issues, but potentially be impacted by COVID as well. So there's some initiatives like that that are taking place. But again, we're rolling with this as much as we can, just because we're not quite sure what tomorrow is going to look like, but we want to do whatever we can to be prepared for what we might be facing. Those were the 4 questions that I had come my way in advance. The only other thing I can throw out to you is, like I mentioned briefly with the demonstrations, there was some concern about our community about how our police department was running basically on an everyday basis, because fortunately most of our community members don't need police service every day. We're always going to be there when you do find yourself potentially in need, and you're going to always get a professional, competent response. But with the concerns about police use of force and really how those decisions were made, the mayor took the initiative to sign off on what was called the Obama Pledge, which was really trying to get communities to kind of get engaged with how their police departments were run, and was there any considerations for changes in use of force policies and things like that. So that led to a series of community events that were almost right dab in the middle of. The first event was held a few weeks ago, where we kind of did a presentation to the community about how the police department is structured, how we run, and how we operate, and the kind of the policies that we operate within. So it was more of an educational briefing from the police department. We have a second event coming up next Wednesday night. It's all on our police department website, the city website, specifically on the city council page of the city website, where you could log in and join us in that conversation. The next event that's next Wednesday night is going to be focused mainly on some of the questions that our community members had, and we're going to walk through some of those situations that they threw out questions on. Ultimately, the third event, the final event, is going to be in December, and we'll have more of an interactive dialogue and hopefully hear more from our community members about their lived experiences dealing with police in general, and maybe even locally within the Tualatin community. So we're very happy to be working through that. We want to be as transparent as possible, make sure that our community is comfortable with the level of service we provide, and they kind of understand some of the thought processes we have as our officers are making decisions on a daily basis. So that's me rambling on for a little bit. Are there any questions out there that I might be able to talk through and hopefully provide some answers to?
So if you have a question, you're welcome to unmute, or if you don't have a microphone, you can send a question for Chief Steele into the chat.
So I sent this in via the chat, Officer Steele. So I've been making a lot of these fabric masks, and initially, you know, I know that the police force uses the proper N95s. In your work with all of these other our neighbors and residents of Tualatin, do you have any use for additional fabric masks that would be helpful as we continue through some really critical times?
I really appreciate that offer. I think at this point, we are where we need to be when it comes to protective equipment for our officers and our staff. You know, again, now that we've been dealing with this for 8 months, early on, there was a lot of concerns about the supply chains and how we were going to access some of some of those resources that we need. That chain is kind of caught up, so a lot of that is readily available. So we are pretty fortunate to have what we need. But I appreciate that.
Well,
offer.
this is more for the people that you come in contact with. For those people that aren't wearing a mask that you come across, be it farm workers or whatever.
Yeah, I don't think we're seeing that on a regular basis where
Okay.
we're coming into contact with people that don't have those resources available. The more of the challenge has been just kind of staying current with what the guidance has been from the Oregon Health Authority, when you're going to wear a mask, when you're not going to wear a mask, if you're indoors, if you're outdoors, if you can't stay within 6 feet, you know, all of those things that are fluid and they're changing on a somewhat regular basis. We're just trying to stay current with all of that. And I'll just throw out, you know, we're doing everything we can to keep our workforce healthy. We don't have an unlimited amount of police officers, and we've been impacted by COVID. We've had a positive test and others that have had to quarantine as a result of the virus. So it has had an impact on our officers, but we have to have people available because the 911 calls, I will tell you, when this started back in March 13th, when a lot of this impacted so many of us, we were pretty quiet there for a couple of weeks. Our call load went down quite a bit, but it gradually started to creep back up, and it's really business as usual for us now. Our call load is pretty much on par where it has been in previous years. So we just got to make sure that we have healthy officers that can respond to whatever the situation might be needing.
So Sally, I'm going to interject. We're just about at time for Chief Steele. I'm not sure if Stephen Myers is on the line.
I didn't see him come.
Yeah, I'm not seeing him yet either. He did confirm that he would be here today. So I know Steve Coper is here if you wanted to switch around the agenda a little bit to give Stephen a little bit more time.
Let's see. Is there one last question for Chief Steele, or should we be moving on? We're moving on.
Well, just remember, we're always here for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That non-emergency number that we push out so much, if you can put it on your refrigerator, it's 503-629-0111. It'll be recorded now. It's in the minutes. That's a number we want everybody in the county to know. You just call that number, tell our dispatchers what's going on, and they'll get the appropriate agency. And then obviously 911 is available too for if you ever find yourself in that situation.
Thank you so much for being with us tonight. Thank you for taking the time to answer some questions and just giving us an update on the city. We appreciate it.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. The next person, as Megan said on our agenda, is from Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, but it doesn't appear that he is here yet. So we're going to move on for an update on the Basalt Creek development. We have Assistant Community Development Director Steve Coper here to give us just a quick update on what's happening down the road. So Steve, you're on.
Thank you, Sally. Good evening, everyone. I just have to say that it's really great to see so many people on this virtual meeting. This is one of the best virtually attended city meetings that I've been to. So kudos to all of you for taking time out of your lives to do this. it's really great to see it. I do have just a brief presentation to accompany my comments. Are we in now? Is everyone seeing it? Great.
Looks good.
All right, thank you. So tonight's update, we're gonna just orient ourselves, show where Basalt Creek, where the area is for those of you that don't know. A little bit of background about how the Basalt Creek area came into the city for planning purposes. I'll talk about a couple of recent applications and developments that we've seen. Talk about some of the future projects that we at least know are in the pipeline. And then I'll turn it over for Q&A. So like I said, this is the Basalt Creek. This is the planning area. The geographic area is between the southern boundary of Tualatin and the northern boundary of Wilsonville. It's bisected by the partially built, but most of it will be future built Basalt Creek Parkway. It's bounded on the east side by I-5 and then by roughly by 124th and Basalt Creek Parkway to the west. This map also shows some of the zoning, and so what you see in that blue area is manufacturing park industrial zoning. The yellows and orange are residential zones, and then there's a small area which is on the right-hand side of the slide, which is in red. That's a future small neighborhood commercial area. So again, wasn't sure how much knowledge folks had of the Basalt Creek planning process, but essentially the geographic area itself was brought into the Portland Metropolitan Urban Growth Boundary in 2004. So that was the area that is both, will be in Wilsonville in the future, as well as Tualatin in the future. Concept planning for the area, determining what kind of land uses and where streets and sewers and all that other kind of stuff would go, was done jointly between Tualatin and Wilsonville. It took until 2018 for Tualatin to finalize all that work and then adopt its own concept plan, which set forth that zoning as well as the future roadway system. And then in 2019, the city council approved a comprehensive plan amendment, which made the zoning final and applicable to properties as they annex into the city. So recent applications that we've seen, most of them have been concentrated on the easterly residential side of the district. So you see Norwood Road is kind of the northeast boundary of the Basalt Creek planning area. And then the southern boundary is the current Green Hill Lane, which will be the future Basalt Creek Parkway extension. And then Boone's Ferry Road runs north-south through the area. So the first recent application that we had was annexation of the property outlined in red. It's also known as the Autumn Sunrise, or Gordon Root is the property owner that's associated with that property. So that happened, the council approved that annexation in September of this year. And then subsequently in November, so just actually this Monday night, the council approved annexation of the property that's known as the Pennington property. And so a lot of you know that property along Norwood that's next to the Horizon School is the property that has lots of trees on it. And then other recent application in addition to annexation. So the annexation is really just incorporation of that property into the city limits. It doesn't do any development. It doesn't approve anything other than the property just being in the city. And so this application here, it's a complicated term, plan text amendment. Really what it means is it means a change to the rules that apply to those properties. And so in this case, the property owners got together and applied to petition to change the rules that are applicable to those properties. And so the city council approved some modifications to them. They required that any development that happens in this red area needs to dedicate 5% of its area to open space, which would provide either tree preservation, and or recreational amenity. And then also in consistency with this being slightly higher than low density residential zone, council required 20% of the overall units to be townhomes. And then what'll happen, again, is that this application and approval by the council didn't actually approve any development. Again, it just changed the rules that are applicable to these future developments. And so each or any of these, whether it's multiple applications or one application, will have to be approved as a conditional use permit through the Planning Commission. And so if you ever have any questions about that, I serve as the city's liaison for staff to the Planning Commission. So I'm happy to chat with anyone at any time. So that leads me to future projects. Again, the future projects are all clustered in this same area. And so the first that's worth mentioning is another future annexation. So the annexation would just bring the territory into the city, and then the city rules could be applied to it. This site in particular has received funding through the Metro housing bond process to help facilitate a future affordable housing project. And so there'd be architectural review annexation. So that's an application to review the standards that apply to that kind of a development. That would be reviewed by the city's architectural review board. It's a public hearing process, and similarly, I serve as the liaison to that group. So if you have any questions about that process, I'm happy to help out. Another upcoming project is a plan text amendment. So again, a rule change. In this case, it's not a change to the text rules, but rather a change to the location of the zone. And so this proposal would essentially reconfigure the neighborhood commercial zone so that it would provide more frontage along Boones Ferry Road to better facilitate a retail development, which of course relies on visibility from the road. And then the next upcoming application is, like I mentioned on that previous slide, the conditional use permit or permits for a small lot subdivision for both the Autumn Sunrise and Pennington properties. I think it's expected that they would come in as separate applications, but they could come in as one application. They could come in as phased applications. This slide, which is a slide that the applicant themselves created and presented when they made that code change proposal to the city council. This is a slide from their presentation. So it kind of gives you an idea of the type of development pattern that would occur. Again, it's not the specific pattern that would be approved. They'd have to actually propose it, and then it would get approved through the Planning Commission. And then not shown on this slide, but I think also just relevant, is that the Basalt Creek area generally is not fully served with public infrastructure. And so the big one is construction of sewer. And so the sewer provider, Clean Water Services, is in the process of working through engineering how to extend sewer, which is currently only extended to the Norwood Road area. And then also the city provides water service. Municipal water is provided by Tualatin. And so at the same time as that sewer extension conversation happens and development starts to occur, the city will have to figure out, and that will happen through development in that case, but figure out how to extend the water system. And then the roadway improvements, which is a question that we get a lot, roadway and traffic. Those are really important and relevant issues. The answer to that is that the traffic is reviewed application to application. And so we'll have to wait until we get those small lot subdivision applications to see the traffic study. And so the traffic study will basically have to demonstrate that the development that is being proposed complies with the traffic studies that were done at the time of that 2019 code amendment that was approved by the council. And so there's kind of a check and balance system on the traffic overall. And then road improvements really depend on the specific development. And so they can, I mean, you see from this development pattern, it shows locations of roads, but those are conceptual right now. And so those are, again, determined through the review process, and they depend on how much or how little development is actually proposed at that time. And then the last thing in conclusion, which is a big project that I alluded to earlier, is the extension of the Basalt Creek Parkway. And so as you all probably know, it currently terminates on the other side of Basalt Creek over at Grahams Ferry Road. And so in the future, it's a Washington County project, but will be go over the Basalt Creek Canyon via a bridge on pylons, and then it will connect with Boones Ferry Road, and then it's eventually planned to go further east and extend onto the other side of Boones Ferry, almost to I-5, and it would roughly be in the same location as that old kind of farm road, Green Hill Lane, as it's known, is located right now. And so that's an overview of what's going on, what is coming up in the future, and with that, I'm happy to stop talking and answer questions.
Thank you, Steve. That was a lot of information. And the first question I have is, these slides are available on the city website. I'm looking at a computer right now, and I can see the slides, but I can't read a lot of the detail on them. So
Yeah.
where is it available?
So I provided them to Megan. I don't know if we can post them somewhere, but we can definitely share them and send them out.
Yeah, I can either post them on the same calendar link for the meeting or send it as part of an email after the fact. Either way.
Okay. Let's post them, and that way everybody can see them. The second question I had is, there was a lot of activity on the next door site that was focused on cutting down a lot of trees. And I think that I think it was talking about the Pennington property that is on Norwood, where
That's right. That's right.
that dense forest and everything. What's happening with that?
Well, so I mean, a couple of things. One is, and that's why I highlighted that as one of those properties that was just annexed to the city, effective on Monday. And so previously, the city didn't have any control over it. Now that the property is annexed, it's subject to the city's rules. And so really what's going to have to happen is that the property owner is going to have an arborist prepare a report and identify what trees they're removing and what trees that they're retaining. And that's going to happen as part of, most likely as part of the subdivision process. And so that would probably occur either through the small lot conditional use permit with the planning commission, or some follow-up process, but most likely it would be identified at that stage. And so that's a good opportunity for the public, because it's a public hearing, to participate, review the materials, and provide feedback.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Steve?
Is Tualatin and Wilsonville on the same sewage system, or?
They're not. No, Wilsonville has its own municipal sewer system, and then the Clean Water Services, Washington County Clean Water Services provided sewer service to Tualatin, and so that's part of what's complicating, I think, the infrastructure development is that they're going to have to essentially pump all the way north, and so eventually the sewer treatment system is up in Durham.
Are there plans to extend Norwood?
When you say extend Norwood, do you mean like beyond Boones Ferry west?
Yes.
No, they're not. It's not part of the transportation system. I mean, basically, it's been deemed to not be necessary to serve whatever development could happen in the area.
Does Tualatin's boundary go all the way to Day Road? Or is that Wilson?
No, that's Wilsonville by that point. So that, like I said, that kind of farm road, if you've ever been down there and noticed it, Green Hill Lane is roughly the boundary between the two cities in the future.
Okay.
Is Greenville Lane the one that extends off of where Basalt Creek ends right now?
So Basalt Creek ends on Graham's Ferry, and then Green Hill Lane is over on Boone's Ferry.
Oh, okay.
I mean, like if you, it's kind of on the other side. I mean, you can kind of,
yeah.
you can see it through, like if you look on a map of aerial, you kind of see they line up. And that's the intention, right? Because they're gonna build the parkway and take advantage of as much of the right of way that's already there.
Steve, I'm going to have to cut things off now. We need to move on in our agenda. You've given us a lot of good information, and I'm glad that the slides are going to be available on the city website so that we can go look at them. So thank you very much for your presentation.
You're welcome, and thank you, everyone.
Next up is Valerie Pratt. She's the city council representative, and she's just going to give us an update from city council. So Valerie.
Hi, I'm going to take a little liberty here since Chief Steele was just on, and I heard someone really wanting to help out the police department, but the Tualatin Community Police Foundation is doing they call it a rubber duck raffle, and they're $10 a ticket. And why I'm mentioning this is if you want to support the police, they're often the first responders, and we're trying to replace 4 AED machines in the police cars that need to be replaced. So I think that's a real important thing. I wanted to mention it really quick. If you're interested, tucpf.org. Thanks. Well, I guess the biggest thing that happened recently is we had an election, and Councilor Morrison, who's here tonight, and Councilor Kellogg are stepping down. And we now will have we are now going to have a council of 6 women, which we're being told is unprecedented. So that should be interesting, and good luck to Mayor Bubenik. But Cindy and Kristen have both really been involved in the community. I served with Kristen on Tea Park. She's the vice chair, and Cindy has been on a lot of committee. Well, she runs Tualatin Together. I know she was on the budget committee. She's on the Tualatin 2040 committee, and I imagine a myriad other amount of committees. So they're both coming in with a nice knowledge base, which will be great to get things going in the new year. This last year, I guess the big thing, of course, was the COVID, which is unexpected. So I look back a little bit, and we declared a state of emergency back on March 23rd. City offices shut down for a while, and then they became as creative as they could to keep things running. I know the library did a great job of having the book and a place to store them for a couple of weeks, and gave out lunches to the kids during the summer. So we've been all trying to operate. City council, we've been meeting on Zoom like everybody. So it's been interesting. We were able to, someone on city staff, and I can't remember who now, they were able to find $250,000 that we were able to reallocate and help out our small businesses in the community. We got some state revenue funds. Washington County has provided PPE masks and other things for small businesses, which means under 50 employees, and they have that available at the chamber. Let's see, where am I? Oh, and then as far the other thing, being an accountant, it always concerns me is the budget, and our Don Hudson's done a great job. They've cut some things, but we've been pretty fortunate because he runs things pretty conservatively, and we didn't have the big events like the Pumpkin Regatta, so that saved some money. The other thing that Don really pointed out is we're fortunate to be a state where, or in our city, that a lot of our revenues come from property taxes, which will generally continue to be paid, as opposed to a state where you're relying on sales tax, which those are the state places that are really hurting right now. On to, I guess, what Steve was talking about, the Basalt Creek annexation. There was a committee that did what was called Tualatin 2040, and it did a housing needs analysis, and economic opportunities analysis, and policy prioritization. And we've been focused most on the housing needs analysis, and not surprisingly, it was found that there's this need for what's called missing middle housing and affordable housing. And missing middle, I think of it as maybe starter homes or homes for people that can't afford the high prices of housing in Tualatin. And also senior homes. So a lot of that you're seeing with an annexation, if the development goes in, that was part of why there was a fight for that 25% of the attached housing, because that's the only way to get that affordable housing in there. I still have a concern of senior housing though, because everybody wants to build up, and if you're my age or older, you know that you don't want stairs. So we'll see how we can work on that going forward. The transportation bond that was passed a few years ago, there's a couple things that are going to be right in our area. There's going to be a, they're working on a sidewalk corridor bike lane project, and it's from Boone's Ferry from Arapahoe, I think, up past the high school. And you can go on the city website right now and put in comments of what you'd like to see. So I'd really encourage you to do that. And we are going to get, I think in the next year or so, a flashing pedestrian crosswalk right at Arapahoe and Boone's Ferry, which is very needed. And then Council South, the rest of the year, I think the big things I noticed we have to talk about, which are, we're talking about reducing the cannabis zones from 3,000 to 1,000 feet, and that would increase the industrial area. We're excluding the central area, and it would leave a little area by the next exit up at Bridgeport. We're going to discuss the parks. We've had a lot of talks about parks funding. Our parks have a lot of deferred maintenance from decades, and so 42% of our park assets are on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being great condition and 5 being not usable. 42% of our park assets are 4s or 5s. A 4 would be like if you've been on the Chief Dakotan Parkway, that along Martinazzi here, and if you've seen all the tree roots up and stuff, that would be what's considered a 4. A 5 would be something like there's a bridge, a little wood pedestrian bridge in Boone's Ferry Park, and that's not usable and closed off at this time. So we have a tough discussion ahead of how to help pay for that, and especially when, you know, we're in a COVID epidemic. And then the last thing we have we're starting on is a climate action plan and working towards that for the city. Then after the end of the year, the new council will meet towards the end of January, and we'll set an agenda for next year, and everybody puts what their goals and they'd like to see, and then we come to consensus and we'll work forward into next year.
Valerie, thank you very much. If you have questions for Valerie, I'm afraid we're running way behind time now, and I see that our representative from Tualatin Valley Fire is here. So I think we're just gonna move on. And if you can contact Valerie through the city council, that would be great. So now I'd like to introduce Stephen Myers. Stephen, you have about 5 minutes. We're already behind schedule, so I apologize for that, but welcome anyway. The floor is yours.
That's okay. I'll be brief. Thanks for having us. At Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, obviously how we respond to emergencies has changed. The way that you see our firefighters has changed. If you're not aware, in an effort to preserve the personal protective equipment that we have, we've gone to a Tyvek suit essentially, as that look, so that it can be reusable. And be decontaminated after calls. That is challenging, as we enjoy making eye contact and smiling and connecting with our patients and communicating in emergency situations. So it does create barriers between us and the people that we serve. But we also know it's the safe thing to do to make sure that we have the supplies that we need for the long haul. And as we're seeing, you know, as cases rise in our area. Additionally, we've had a COVID task force that's been in place since about March. That task force continues to look at how we deploy and everything from who's going on calls, how we work with dispatch, and what protocols we can put in place to lower the risk for our firefighters of exposure. You know, oftentimes our fire chief says, you know, he knows that we have the equipment and training to be successful. He's more worried about our firefighters and being diligent and vigilance in their own lives and being careful as we connect and spend about 1/3 of our lives in a fire station together. So that's something that we've also introduced, whether it's face masks at fire stations, other protocols that keep people safe or keep our firefighters safe even when they're not on a call. So that's just kind of the quick, what does COVID look like when you're providing, or how does emergency response look like in a world where we're fighting against a global pandemic? Some quick updates around our district. So you may have already been aware that off Childs Road, there's a new station, Station 39, that serves into Tualatin. This is a great asset, not only for the city of Tualatin, but for the entirety of our district. They actually have a function on fire scenes beyond responding to regular calls and providing support, that they actually work to decontaminate our firefighters after fire calls. There's lots of risk and exposure that can happen to firefighters in toxic environment of fire. And so it's something they do to make sure that our firefighters have a lower risk of cancer and carcinogen exposure. So we'd be proud that not only do they serve in calls that they're responding to in Tualatin, but they're actually also a part of a protocol to keep our firefighters safe and healthy. In addition to that, we do have two other things, projects that were started before all of this that are still moving forward. And that includes Station 54, which is down in Charbonneau. So this is a little bit different station. It's a smaller one. It's going to have 2 paramedics and a medic unit that are going to be located at it. But what it does for us is it really helps to make sure that the Charbonneau area, that we can respond into there. And most of the time, those are medical calls in nature. So it gives us the asset and the resources required for that area. And again, it helps us with response across the area. For anybody that's tried to go down I-5 off Boone's Ferry Bridge during rush hour, getting from Wilsonville to Charbonneau is not an easy endeavor. And for us in an emergency situation, those minutes are critical. So this will be an important asset in really reducing call times in the area. We also have a logistics center that you may be seeing off of Avery Street. It's a repurposing of a building that was there before, and this allows us to bring our apparatus maintenance, our supply, and a couple other things more centrally located to our district. So we're excited that that's going to be in Tualatin as an important resource for our entire district. I did have in advance a couple questions that I was just going to address. Sally, if I'm okay to do those real quick.
If you can do them really quickly, yes.
Okay, so the first one was in regards to, obviously we saw a lot of wildfires this summer. And the first one was, how did the emergency alert system work? The reality is that each county has different alert systems. So they're really trying to study which ones were very successful in doing that. What I would really let you know about is 2 things. First, here you have Pulse Point, which is an app you can get on your phone, and that will let you know of what calls and things are happening in your area outside of just wildfire. The other one is to go to the county, and being in Tualatin, that could be Clackamas or Washington County, and sign up for that county alert system, because it is how we do push emergency information in those circumstances. And those were systems that were utilized quite a bit. Specifically, we had a large fire on Bald Peak Chehalem Mountain, in which we were able to use that along with dispatch and a reverse 911 call. And then the last one was around defensible space, and people asking about, okay, lesson learned with these wildfires, what can I do for my home? I encourage you to go to tvfnr.com, look up defensible space, because often what starts a house fire in a wildland situation is not a wall of fire. It's actually embers and sparks that are being thrown from that fire ahead of it. And they catch into brush and grass and fuels that are near your home. So everything from cleaning your gutters to limbing up and keeping bushes away from your home can help, whether it's a small bark dust fire that happens or if it's a larger situation like maybe we saw this summer. So more tips at tvfnr.com, but this is a great time to take inventory of keeping your home safe.
Thank you. You did a great job of running through all of that very quickly. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me. Have a good night.
Thank you. Next up is Barbara Bracken. Barbara is from the Community Emergency Response Team, and she's going to be talking about Tualatin Neighborhood Ready. And Barbara, you have about 5 minutes.
Thank you, Sally. I'm a volunteer with the Tualatin CERT team and started a lot of the program on, Tualatin Neighborhood Ready. We work with individuals and divided up the city of Tualatin into small cluster neighborhoods. I've got a map and I know it's impossible to see it, but basically what we did was divide up the city, the residential part, into cluster, what we're calling neighborhood clusters of 12 to 14 homes. Originally, the plan was that we meet with people that are willing to host their neighbors and present a program with both individual as well as neighborhood preparedness. One of the advantages of COVID is that it overcomes some of the barriers that we were running into. People that maybe had too small a homes to feel comfortable hosting that group, or didn't want people in their homes, didn't feel comfortable with it for whatever reason. So COVID will allow us to do Zoom meetings. And I want to give a shout out to Charlene Wilson, who is putting together a wonderful PowerPoint. And we are now going to be able to soon offer Zoom meetings to carry forward with this presentation. This information is so critical for you, our neighbors, to know. We will present, you will get a handbook, either a hard copy or a downloadable copy. And it covers everything from the disasters that we face, whether it be earthquake, fire, in some case floodings, whatever disasters and risks that are greatest. We go through and will provide information on home preparedness, how to put together a family plan, individual home preparation, the supplies that you should need, the go bags, the work and car bags that we suggest that you prepare, and then get into neighborhood preparedness. We are going to be needing to count on our neighbors. It's already been proven that over 85% of the neighborhoods that are resilient are because they have a good neighborhood connection. So not only is it critical that you prepare individually, but how important it is to get to know your neighbors, and we're going to help you do that. You'll be sharing information, contact information. Again, this is all information that you're willing to share. It stays with your individual group, but it also covers the supplies and skills that collectively you have, which are going to make your group much more resilient in the case of any kind of disaster. We go through, so as an example on skills and supplies, wouldn't it be great to know who has medical background in your neighborhood, who has special needs in your neighborhood? I tell the story, a true story of, there was a woman that was a paraplegic in a neighborhood and no one knew she lived there. So it gets to know the needs and the things that your neighborhood can come together and support each other. What I'm seeking tonight are people that are willing to be hosts. I don't have a way to connect with you, and what I need basically are emails. So if you are willing to help with that service, and basically what I would need you to do is provide me with some emails of your neighbors and help with sort of marketing that we have this Zoom presentation available. Please email me and I'll put it in the chat, but it's Tualatin Ready, MYN@gmail.com. And we will work with you. We have a great group of facilitators. We will work with you to put this together and get this information out to you, because A, it's critical, and B, we got a little bit more time on our hands the next couple of months. So this is a good time to make this a priority and to come together both individually in your family as well as your neighborhood to become the most resilient and prepared city that we can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. And we did Barbara's presentation in my cluster of, ours is actually 18 homes, and got really positive response. It's a great way to get to know your neighbors, which is just critically important at the time of a disaster or an emergency or a pandemic. So It's a great program and I highly recommend it. Thanks, Barbara. We're going to move on now to the CIO elections. So our bylaws for our CIO require that we have officers. The officers are president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and land use officer. Currently, we have all of those positions filled and we're very pleased about that. But the bylaws require that every year, a couple of our officers get elected so that we have an opportunity for new people to come in if they want to. The positions that are open this year are the vice president and the treasurer. And Megan, can you put up those job descriptions or do you want me to read them?
I've got them right here.
Thank you.
So do you want me to read them out loud while I've got the screen up?
Yeah, sure. That'd be great.
So the first position is vice president. Serve in the absence of the president, shall assist the president, serve as the chair of the nominating committee if required, and perform other duties as designated by the board. After formation, the vice president shall be elected in even numbered years.
And here we are in an even numbered year. So we are looking for anyone who would like to nominate themselves, volunteer, or otherwise might be interested in being the vice president of our CIO. So do we have anybody on the call tonight that is interested in stepping up to a position of vice president for the Martinazzi Woods CIO? You're welcome to unmute now. Now is the time. Okay, this is usually what happens at these meetings. We don't usually get a lot of volunteers. Our current vice president is Del Moore. Del, do you want to wave? Del is waving. And I asked Del ahead of time if he would be willing to continue to serve if we didn't get any volunteers. And he said yes. So this is like an auction, going once, going twice. Del, it looks like you're our vice president.
Yay.
Yay. Okay, the next office is treasurer. And the treasurer is an interesting position because you don't actually handle money as the treasurer of the city. So even though it says shall receive, deposit, disperse, and account for all CIO funds, you don't actually deal with money. Prepare and present operating statements at each general meeting or as otherwise requested by the executive board. Present an annual financial report of the grant funding program, and the report shall also be given to a representative of the city and perform other duties as designated by the board. After formation, the treasurer shall be elected in even numbered years. I served as a treasurer before I became the president, and basically the treasurer works with the board in order to facilitate the citywide grant. So every year the city gives each CIO $1,500 that they can apply for. We don't just get it. It is $1,500 that we can apply for community-related projects. We've used this money in the past for National Night Out. We've used it for the sign toppers that are on top of the street signs that say Martinazzi Woods to try and build a sense of community, because if you ask people in Tualatin, they don't know what a CIO is or what CIO they're in. So that was an identity thing. We've also built a CERT supply in order for the community emergency response team in our neighborhood to assist in the event of a disaster. And those are things that have been used in the last couple of years. So the treasurer is responsible for working with the board with the grant process in the city, and you work with the city treasurer. You need to get the grant proposed, written, approved, and then the materials purchased. So that's what the treasurer does, which isn't exactly what the job description said. Does anybody want to nominate themselves or nominate somebody else who isn't here, even if you feel like it, for the position of treasurer? And again, this is the really quiet part of the meeting. Janet Gilkey is our current treasurer. Janet, want to wave? There she is. And as with Dell, I checked ahead of time to see if she was willing to continue to serve for another 2 years. And she said yes. So the board that we have right now is relatively new. We basically, a lot of us came on board a year ago. So working together for another year, I think will really benefit the CIO. And I thank you for that. So it is 8 o'clock on the dot. I gave you just a brief overview of the grant processing. If you have ideas that you think would benefit the community for the use of our $1,500, you need to go to the city website and go under community and look at the CIO rules. The grant process has some very specific instructions and limitations with it. So if you have ideas, I suggest that you go to the city website, look at that, and then contact anyone who is on our board tonight. Or actually, you could contact Megan, or Valerie is in our district, in our CIO, and she would be able to point you back to me. What we're looking at for this year is the possibility of a dog refuse station, so that we don't have nice little bags on the sidewalk, or even worse, unbagged dog poop out there. And we were looking at putting it on Martinazzi by the Shannaco Trail, which, if you're familiar with Martinazzi, where the new flashing signs that tell you what the speed limit is, it's right there. That's what we are thinking of. We were looking at a couple of other possibilities too, but we need to find out the cost from the city on that. So if you have any ideas. Are there any other items of business that anyone would like to discuss tonight?
Yeah, Sally, can I be really, really quick here? Because there's two messages that I want to get out real quick. Hi, Paul Morrison. And I come to almost everybody's CIO meeting because I'm still actively involved with IBOC. I started with IBOC CIO, and we love to see what other CIOs are doing, kind of steal ideas so that our meetings are as good as yours and some of the other ones. And it is great to see. It is a great turnout today. And congratulations, Sally, on doing all the legwork to get these people out. First off, most important, if you or anyone you know has kids in school, there are grants available for childcare. Both the Tiger Tualatin School District and the City of Tualatin both have funds available. And contrary to a lot of rumors going around, there are open spots both within the Tiger Tualatin School District and at multiple childcare centers throughout Tualatin. So there is funding available for those who need help and assistance. The second thing is we're continuing to work with Clackamas County to get public transportation from the Meridian Hospital out to Oregon City. And that's been moving forward, and is occasionally you'll see, and there was a recent blast from our late great leader on this issue, Garrett Pryor, who has left us for ODOT. And if you haven't seen it, it's on the city website, to kind of chime in about your thoughts on the public transportation there. The funding is, for the most part, kind of there. And now it's just a question of working out all the details to get that going. Also, there's still open house with ODOT on funding for improvements in 2025 through 28. Again, go to ODOT. You can do they're having an open house through next week. They're accepting public comments. The City of Tualatin has sent a letter. Clackamas County elected officials have sent letters in support of improvements, including the most important one, improvements along 205. And also, attention please, is open, there's been constant public input on 205 and tolling. And it's really important that your voice be heard. Universally, from what I can tell, nobody supports tolling on 205 because of all the problems it's going to cause. And so we have to keep that pressure up. And then finally, Jennifer, I don't think she's still with us, had a question in the chat room, and it's near and dear to my heart because I live in that area. And that was, is it going to be a flashing beacon at Grants Ferry and Ibach? Not yet, but if we keep up the pressure, we'll finally get them to convince the city to change their mind. That's deemed to be too close to Boone's Ferry Road and Ibach, and so they want people to walk up to the corner to cross. It's the same reason we're having a hard time getting a crosswalk on the north parking lot at Tualatin High School. But we're working on it, and the more that we can lobby our incredible city staff and Megan and Steve Cooper do an amazing job. Maybe we can get that because there's a lot of people who cross there. And if anyone has any questions, you can just email me or send them through Megan for any of one on the city council. If you have any questions for the mayor, same thing. Feel free to give us a shout out. We're always here, always available to answer questions.
Thank you, Paul. That was good information. I'm really glad that you came in at the end. Last call. Any questions? I want to thank all of the presenters. Oh, Barbara, you have your hand up?
I think that's the applause.
Clapping.
Just applause saying thank you.
Okay. With that, I want to thank all of the presenters tonight, and our meeting is adjourned. So Megan, I think you can turn off the recording. Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting.
Good. Thank you.